Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever episode of All the Angles, powered by the Hexagon Cup. Alongside me, Alex Inglot, is Hexagon Cup founder Enrique Buenaventura, who launched the first edition of this high-profile, high-entertainment global franchise league back in Madrid this last January. More on that in a minute. But we wanted to use this episode, or pre-episode, to introduce the podcast, what makes it different and what its objectives are. So, first of all, what is All the Angles? What we really are trying to do with this podcast is to be the first port of call for those already in the padel industry or those looking to enter the space who really want to understand how we got here in terms of the trajectory of the sport and perhaps more importantly, where we are heading. So we're not setting out to create a fan platform as such. Of course, we're all fans and we're all players. And while the tone of these episodes might be informal, we're going to look to be efficient, data and insight orientated to make sure that this is a valuable use of the time of our predominantly B2B audience. With the support of the Hexagon Cup leadership team, including Enrique, who will be joining me every video and podcast episode as guest hosts, I'll be talking to the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the investors and the doers from every vertical of the padel business, from every market with a story to tell. Sometimes we're also going to be adding non-padel industry leaders into the conversation to really give us and our listeners a more zoomed out view and context. So who do you think should listen to this podcast, Enrique? Who do you think are the kind of the audience that we're really going to be targeting?
First of all, good morning. And thank you, Alex, for the initiative. Very much looking forward to have Hexagon involved in this. I think this is open to anyone that loves sport and specifically padel. No? So there's a lot of things happening right now around the padel industry. Obviously, it's the playing piece is the one that everyone loves and enjoys. But there's a lot of information that people are willing to get. They want to know, and it's not so obvious where to find it. No, so I think this is the place for those people that love the sport to get some extra from the players, from the business people around the sport and the business itself. So again, anyone that loves the sport and wants to know a little bit more than just what is the practice of the sport.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, look, to put it in context, the bottom line here is that the padel industry is booming globally. You know, we've got the established countries like Spain and Argentina who are developing at knots still. But we've also got the fan, the player love affair that's beginning to evolve in all kinds of new markets in every corner of the planet. So either way, it's really never a bad time to nurture curiosity, awareness, understanding and expertise. And that's really what we're trying to do here. And now is better than later. So I think from my point of view and why I really wanted to start this podcast is I think it's really more crucial than ever that we share our stories, we share our experiences, successes, mistakes across the borders, across the subsectors, across the regions, because I hope that All the Angles is really going to become almost like a library or an archive that will provide value, but also an insight bridge across the different parts of this exciting sport and industry. I think, Enrique, we've seen different platforms and podcasts who are either maybe focused more on the Latin speaking sector, you know, Spain, Argentina, Mexico. And we've seen some who are very focused on the kind of the newer markets, maybe the Scandinavian markets or maybe the UK and the US markets. And really what I want to see ideally, and that's why I really am so excited to have the Hexagon Cup involved in this, is to really forge those bridges, those conversations. So we see the perspective from Spain and we learn from that. But we also see some of the exciting things that are happening in, for example, the US or India or Asia or the Middle East. And ideally, and maybe even get those people from those different markets coming together and having a shared conversation on each episode. So that kind of bridging concept, I think, is pretty crucial to what I'm trying to do. I know bridging is like a big piece of what the Hexagon Cup does in many facets of its business as well.
No, absolutely. I think it's key. As you were saying, obviously the padel has been big in Spain, Argentina for many years, over 30 years, and it's becoming big in the rest of the world. And now it's kind of divided. No, the Latin world, as you were saying, versus the new era in in the UK, in the US, Middle East, everywhere else. And I think it's crucial to get the knowledge from both sides. No? So the point of view from the new development or the new countries that are developing the sport, and the ones that have been working on it for the last 30 years. No? So I think the key to success globally is to get the best of both, no? And hopefully with this we can give a view from absolutely every angle, no? As the name says.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think now's a good time to just kind of provide a little bit of insight about who we are or who I am. And so my name's Alex Inglot. Bit of my background, I studied law and started my career as a corporate lawyer in the heart of London City. After that, I moved into sports communications and public affairs, and I ended my 30s as a board member on the men's ATP tour, the men's tennis tour, where I basically was representing the rights of the players at the highest level of global tennis. Today, as we speak, I'm the commissioner of the ESL Pro League, which is a project that has brought the biggest tournament operator in esports with 15 of the most loved teams from around the world against the backdrop of one of the leading and longest running esports in the world, Counter-Strike. Padel-wise, I've been playing for a few years now, and I'm an investor in projects both in the UK and abroad. Enrique and the Hexagon Cup should probably need no introduction, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to do one nonetheless. So please go ahead and give us a bit of an insight into your own personal journey with padel and the wider sports world, and a little bit of an insight into the Hexagon Cup, especially now after its first event back in Madrid in January.
No, thank you, Alex. So myself, as you, I have a legal background, so I'm a lawyer. I started my career at Vodafone for many years. I was in the UK and Spain, doing many different roles, and most of them were linked to sponsorship. So I was linked to the negotiations of the Ferrari, McLaren sponsorship deals, also Formula One, and that's how I get into motorsport. From there, I moved to become the general counsel of one of the Formula One teams. So I spent 2 years there in HRT Formula One team. So I always say I built and killed a Formula One team in a space of 2 years, knowing a lot of the business of motorsport and sport in general. And from there, I become part of the founding team of Formula E. So, these electric championships started around 11, 12 years ago. And I've been linked to Formula E since then. No? So I am part of the executive team. I'm secretary to the board. And I'm becoming an expert in putting international events in place. No? Padel-wise, I've been playing padel since I'm a kid. No? So I was a tennis player, and in Spain, when it became big, around 30 years ago, I was around 12. At that time, I started playing padel, and since then, I loved it. No, it's one of the sports I practice the most. I was competing when I was young, and then now more recently here in the UK, since it become big also, I'm competing back again. I live in London, and for the last few years, I've been competing in the over 40s, enjoying the padel competition again. And precisely when I saw, and while I was in Formula E, and I saw that padel was booming not only in Spain but everywhere else, I saw the opportunity of doing something else. No, so helping the whole ecosystem with the expertise we have around Formula E. So that's why I became with the idea of Hexagon Cup. I mentioned it to a few of the other founders of Formula E, with Alejandro Gag, Simon Freer, Alberto Longo. So we've all been around Formula E since the beginning. Obviously, Alejandro is the founder of Formula E, but also Extreme E, E1 series, a lot of very successful sporting properties that we've been all helping around, and we decided to do something together around padel. So that's how we came with the idea of Hexagon, bringing the concept of motorsport, so a teams competition that we thought was lacking in padel. So we have obviously the national championships that are very exciting, but they are very exciting only in the finals, because it's always a Spain-Argentina final. No? And by seeing that padel was growing all around the world, but because people love playing, but it's very difficult on the media side to grow it because there's no heroes, no national heroes, no, and that's going to be like that for a while. No, I think the Spanish and the Argentinians are going to dominate for the next probably 10 or even more years. So how can you make people in Middle East, in the UK, in the US, be attracted by the media side of the sport if there's no national heroes? No, so that's how we came with this idea of doing international teams headed by a celebrity or a big name that can bring the fans together. But in those teams, you can have Spanish players, Argentinian players, you can have the best players in the world. And this is how the concept was born. And we came with this idea of Hexagon Cup, the biggest teams competition, but obviously involved in the official professional calendar. Now, obviously, with Premier Padel as the main player there, together with the International Federation. So our focus was to think on a kind of Labour Cup concept, so a one-off, a big event, or like a Grand Slam type of events, so one of the best events in the year, very different to everything that was that is happening, and to help and support everything else that is happening. No, so by creating this concept, we believe that, for example, if you have a UK team, as we have, so we have a team, the Advantage team, which is co-owned by Andy Murray, and they won the first edition of the Hexagon Cup. By having this team, obviously, we did a presentation here in the UK after winning the Hexagon Cup. So people will see that there's a British team winning a padel competition. So that will make people follow that team, follow Hexagon Cup, and then follow those players that are playing for that team. And that will make, hopefully, the British fans follow Premier Padel, because now they know who those players are, even if they are not British, but they play for a British team at the Hexagon Cup, and then hopefully that will increase the fan base in for example, the UK. And then obviously we replicate that in the other teams. So it's a very exciting project. The first event went really well. It took place in Madrid at the start of the year, and the plan is to continue with that event every single year, once a year, and obviously doing a lot of other promotional events, pro-am events, and actually we have some other exciting projects and news to come around the amateur world and other interesting pieces that we will reveal very soon.
Well, we look forward to hearing about that, maybe even on some of these episodes. So we can talk a little bit about the kind of the roadmap or the episodes that we've got planned, or that we're hoping to put together for this first season of All the Angles. I think some of the episodes are going to focus on, for example, we're going to try and focus on the 2024 Playtomic Global Padel Report. We're going to, obviously that's a kind of an annual report now that comes out, put together by Playtomic and their friends at PwC, formerly Deloitte, but now PwC, to really take a look and analyze and evaluate what's happening in the global padel market. So we're going to be taking a look through that and pulling out the insights for the stakeholders in the industry. We're going to also be talking to some of the people leading the Premier Padel Tour that you just mentioned. That is the now, clearly the dominant global tour where the best of the best play each other across tournaments around the world. And we're going to be speaking to some of the leadership team behind that tour that arrived in 2022 and has now established its reputation, established its place in the calendar, and it has got tournaments in all of the biggest cities, and with majors in Italy, in Doha, in France, and also in Mexico. We're going to look under the bonnet and try and understand the journey of the Premier Padel Tour and what their vision and plans are for the future. We're also going to devote an episode to the Swedish padel sector. The Swedish market has been a high focus for a lot of the people who are interested in padel around the world for its success years back, and now its struggles more recently. And we're going to talk to some of the people who have been there during that tempestuous period of time, and who are going to give us the real insights as to what happened, what didn't happen, why it happened, what we should learn and what we should ignore, what's relevant for other markets. So really trying to pull the lessons, pull the insights from the story of Sweden. We're We're also going to be talking to some of the biggest investors in padel around the world and talking about the way that the structures and the theses of these investment portfolios have evolved from private individuals to family investment houses, now through to quite sophisticated VC, PE kind of structures. We've got examples in Spain. We've also got examples in America. So we'll be talking to them and trying to track the evolution of how people are investing in and funding the future growth of padel. We're also going to talk about the players, the best players in the world, and how things have changed for them in the last few years with this global boom in padel, how that has trickled into their lives and into their expectations. We're going to be talking to some of the agents of the biggest names in the game, trying to understand how that space has evolved, and also how the players and the agents now need to evolve with the expectations and what's on the roadmap for padel. What used to work 5 years ago isn't going to work anymore, and if padel is truly going to grow into the international sport it can be, we're going to need these players to be the heroes, to be the advocates, the ambassadors that really help that growth. So there's lots of stuff that we've got planned, lots of angles, lots of verticals. I'm really excited that we're going to get you or your colleagues to kind of help guide those conversations and really try and pull those insights, the data, the value out of those leaders, those stakeholders.
No, fantastic. And yes, so the plan, obviously, as you mentioned, is for me to join some of these podcasts, but also other members of the Hexagon team, especially the ones that are part of the executive team. So we obviously have people that have been former players. Some of them, they are very involved in the padel business. They have clubs themselves. They know most of the players. They train with them, or the players train at their clubs. And obviously we have some of the best executives around sport and padel within the Hexagon team. And we are very happy to have them joining you in these talks and also opening that Spanish Argentinian sector, because obviously a lot of them are also Spanish and can bridge that language barrier in some of those conversations.
Exactly, and the format-wise, we are going to try and have, as I mentioned, me plus either you or someone from the Hexagon team, and one or two individuals per focus, per episode, to really try and make it much more of a round-table fireside environment where it's more relaxed, more informal, and it's more conversational. Rather than a one-on-one interview. But obviously, as I said, our focus is to try and make this a high-level conversation, really just, diving into the insights, the data, the experiences, the perspectives, to really try and make this as probing and as interesting to our audience as possible, and to see if we can extract the learnings for anyone who's in this space, no matter which vertical they're in, which market they're in. And yeah, to underline again, we really want to make this applicable and relevant to everybody in the market, whether they're in Spain and have been doing it for 30 years, whether they're in America trying to start something new, whether they're exploring opportunities in Asia and in the Asia Pacific wider region. There's hopefully going to be insights and valuable perspectives for all of those audiences. We're also probably, as the season goes on, we might explore different formats to try and see if we can experiment, change the dynamics a little bit. Maybe we might even do recordings at events to try and create a little bit more of a in-person experience. Maybe even broader conversations and debates that are more than 4 or 5 people, on this kind of a recording. To try and explore different ways of really pulling out those nuggets of information, nuggets of insight. But yeah, so stay tuned on how those things evolve. In terms of the next steps, first of all, thanks for listening to this episode. Hopefully it gives you a flavor of what's to come in this first season of All the Angles, powered by the Hexagon Cup. If you like what you hear, if you're excited about what we've got planned, obviously like, share and subscribe, the fundamentals. We're going to put up a website. We're going to have LinkedIn and an ex-Twitter location. You'll be able to find us on YouTube and audio on the usual podcast sites as well. So hopefully there'll be different ways for you to digest whichever way works for you and your calendar and your preferences. We are going to be finding our feet a little with our first season, so we apologize if there are any kind of delays. But we will also be looking to see if we can find Spanish language options to as much of our content as possible in line with our bridging philosophy that we've underlined. It's really important to me that we try and make this applicable, but also accessible for the people in those markets where English is maybe they're not their first or maybe not their second language. And I don't want them to miss out on this. If this truly is going to be the international business of Paddle podcast, I really want everyone to be able to get involved. We're also going to try and give previews of upcoming episodes and guests so that people can know, put it in their diaries. Or more importantly, because I want this to be a little bit more engaging and interactive than the average podcast, if you've got any suggestions for us on this podcast, how we should do different formats, what questions you'd like to ask any of our guests, what guests you'd like to see us speak to, maybe what topics you'd like for us to cover, please feel free to comment on YouTube or send us comments or DMs on LinkedIn or on Twitter X. We will try and take that into consideration because we want to, as I've said, we want to make this as relevant and as impactful as possible for you, the audience. Yeah, so thanks again for listening. Thank you again, Enrique, for joining us on this first or pre-episode. Hopefully we'll see you on a few other episodes during the course of the first season.
No, thank you very much. Very much looking forward to this, and I hope to be in a few more episodes, or if not alongside with you, listening from the other side, absolutely all of them, because I think it's a great initiative. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Stay tuned.